Hey, this is Kendrick with Technology Interpreters. And so today we're going to talk to Daniel McKinney Jr., and he's going to tell us how he managed to make the transition from sales to cybersecurity. So, Daniel, if you would, go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us what you're doing now, and we'll kind of get into the details of how you were able to make a successful transition from sales.
Thank you, Kendrick. I appreciate you taking the time to have me here. I am Daniel McKinney Jr. I am currently associate security engineer. And like Kendrick said, I spent over a decade in sales and I made a transition to cybersecurity, and it was a great move.
So just to kind of tee things up, the way Daniel and I met is I was teaching a networking or leading a networking group for Blacks in cybersecurity. Daniel was a member of that group. And the whole point of the group was to get your networking plus certification. So Daniel, what led you in the first place to think that you wanted to go down the route of even getting your network plus certification? Like, what was the thought process behind that?
I would say the thought process was looking to be in a situation where I felt like my day to day was a little bit more impactful than my day to day was when I was in sales. In sales, it always came down to you hit a quota. Once you hit that quota, it starts over. And it's like you never hit that quota again. What you did then doesn't matter. There's no lasting impact in that. So what I started to notice was people that had worked in IT and cybersecurity, that the impact they made was always substantial, and it always was something that continued to move forward. So I became interested in that, and that's when I joined Black in Cybersecurity. And I was fortunate enough to have someone tell me that, hey, networking is the first thing you kind of want to understand if you're going to make this move. So the Competitive Network Plus is where you kind of want to start. And then when that took place, I saw that there was a class being taught by none other than Kendrick Washington, and I joined that class. And as we'll speak about in a few minutes, man, the rest is history.
Okay. And so let's go ahead and let's talk about the class. So the thing is, first of all, I owe a big apology to Blacks in Cybersecurity, man. Like, one of the things I realized when teaching that class is that the way I teach is probably not the way that everybody needs to be taught. And so I'm a really, 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 really tough teacher, and I'm not for everybody. And so I realized that as I was teaching the networking course, because we started with like 15 people, and when the course, towards the end of the course, there was only 2 people left, right? And the reason why is because I'm very big on people like learning really what cybersecurity is, and Daniel was one of those people. So Daniel, we'll start down the route because we started with networking. And so I'll let you kind of share the story, like what we have, because I think we did 8 weeks or longer or something like that, maybe longer, and networking and stuff like that, and deep dive. So tell us about that part.
Oh yeah, we did. I think it was 8 and 11 weeks, something like that. I think it might have went double digits. It was great because one of the things that you kind of pointed out to us that you made sure that we all did when we were doing the learning and networking was to get a book. You remember that?
Huh?
You made sure we got the book to study from so that we could go back
Yep.
and go over the things that we did. And we also included practice questions and tests online together. And I'm not gonna be honest, you were pretty hard on those. You weren't giving any hints, any shortcuts. It was like you needed to make sure that we understood the concepts and we were actually gaining the knowledge, and we could retain it the next week, because we always did a review at the next week to make sure we weren't just answering the question and then dumping information from our memories, and that we could connect the concepts together. So that was a big deal, and I'm gonna be honest with you, it was very, very tough for me in the beginning. But luckily, I kind of felt like if you're really going to accomplish something and you're really going to grow, it's going to be difficult, especially in the beginning. And you got to get used to being uncomfortable and push through those feelings and those emotions and focus on your goal.
Now, one of the things, so, and just to kind of like frame this, Daniel was the first person before I started doing these cybersecurity mentorships. Daniel was like patient zero, you know what I'm saying? And so I've refined my process. I've gotten better. I've become a little bit softer at my teaching. But the main thing is Daniel was there when it was raw, and wasn't even trying to develop a mentorship program. All I know is I wanted to share, here's what I see that you need to get into the field. Here's the kind of grit, determination, and stuff like that. And I think everybody knows that cybersecurity is not just like, it was being sold like everybody can just get into cybersecurity. The truth is everybody knows that cybersecurity is for like, it's not entry level. It's not an entry level deal anymore. You need to have real skills. And so I had a very unpopular opinion in the way I taught back then, because people were believing that false narrative that it was just like you could just go get your certification and then jump into a cybersecurity job. Plus the market has changed. So it's even harder now to get into cybersecurity. So Daniel, we went through it. We did the training. We drilled like crazy. And I'll let you share what happened when you took the test. So.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And this is one of the realest things I think a part of this journey and that people need to share more. Because like Kendrick said, on social media, online, everybody's, painting this beautiful picture of like, hey, you're gonna it's a linear path, right? You're gonna study, you're gonna take this test, you're gonna get this job making this amount of money. And that's it. And for me, it didn't go that way. I failed a lot. And one of the biggest failures that really like stunned me for a second and had me kind of questioning my decisions was I failed the Network Plus test exam after Kendrick and I did all that studying, after I stuck through all those classes. And Kendrick, you remember this? I was crushed.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
was crushed. And I called him and I was talking to him. I was like, I'm not sure. I don't know. And that was an emotional response to putting all that time in. And I barely failed. I think I failed about like maybe 15, 20 points or something like that, really close. But the point is, I felt like I put in all that time and I didn't pass on that first try. And I got that failure syndrome that like, maybe I'm not smart enough, maybe I can't do this, maybe I need to go back to what I do well, what I do naturally, which is sales. And then what happened after that is I just took some time to really think about, remember the goal. And that's what I kind of drew back on. Like the goal is to be in a position to do something that's impactful, that is going to stretch me, that is going to allow me to grow and to make a substantial impact and a lasting impact as well. Something that I continue to grow in and gain other skills. So that's kind of how I brought myself back down. Talked to Kendrick, of course, great mentor, and then we decided to keep going at it. So I definitely appreciate that. But that's the biggest thing that you're going to have to do is understand that the failures are going to happen, and you got to take the time to understand why you failed, what went wrong, accept it, and then remember to refocus on the goal, because failure doesn't mean the goal changed. It just means it may take you a little bit longer to get there. You might have to take a different route. But when you fail, that doesn't mean the goal changed. I think that's the thing I had to really focus on and remember when that took place.
Yeah. So the thing is, after we kind of discussed, okay, you failed the test, trying to, gotta pull yourself together. But I kind of really like stopped for a second. I was like, okay, so Daniel, like, what is your real goal here? So like, what is your point? Cause like, this was before I was even doing this, like so focused on cyber and stuff like that. I was in flux and all this stuff with what I was doing on my teaching and on the channel and stuff like that. And so I talked to him and he was like, hey, well, I want to get a cybersecurity job. And what are you interested in cybersecurity? Because you can't just think of cybersecurity as like one role, right? It's like 15, 16 different roles. And each of those roles requires like if you really want to be good at it, you have to like specialize in one of them and go super deep in one of those roles. And so he told me that he was interested in, I think cloud is what you told me, right, Daniel?
Initially, I did say cloud. Yep. That
Yeah.
was the first thing that came out of my mouth. Correct.
So once he described it, I was like, well, I understand networking is important, but if you want to be in cloud, why don't you just like start studying like the AWS stuff and like why don't you just, what I'm saying? Why don't you just like full on lean into it? And I do understand. So some people are going to say, well, but you need to understand networking if you're going to work in the cloud. And I'll say to a certain degrees, yes, because you gotta understand subnets and stuff like that. So yes, but Daniel understood all that. So him failing the Network Plus test is not a result of him not knowing it, because I can tell you at the end of that training, he knew it. It came down to just the test taken, and I think IPv6 or something got just something really, really simple.
Yeah.
They got him,
Yeah.
and that happens all the time on tests. So we leaned into that, and as we taught, I think we took 8 months, and I basically just taught cybersecurity to Daniel. Just brought him in just one-on-one sessions, and I'll let you kind of share your perspective on that experience for that training period.
Yeah. So two things happened concurrently, actually. Is that, and now I'll remind you, because we didn't talk about this other piece as much. I was working with you. We were working for, like you said, 8 months, one-on-one, going over different training, different aspects, and kind of leaning into where you really wanted to go, because that journey also led me to thinking about other things. As you know, we ended up in more in vulnerability management, things of that nature. But I also ended up doing a program with Correlation One. Where they're normally, if you look them up, they're normally about data science, but they also started leaning into cybersecurity. So I remember I got the call to apply for that cohort and actually got in, which I was shocked. I'm be honest, I didn't expect to get in. Let me just go and be 100%. I did not expect to get in. I expect to get chosen based on how many people applied and how many people they were going to take. And I got into that, and I remember I told Kendrick, and he was like, oh, wow. That's amazing. You got to lean into that, because I explained to him that we did talk about subnetting. We did talk about compliance, GRC. They kind of gave a really good broad overview to kind of help you pick, your lane, where you were going to go. And that's when Kendrick was like, okay, I think we can work with this, along with the networking that he and I worked with and things of that nature. So I thought it was great. It was hard. It was difficult. It was a lot of late nights. Kendrick, you and I doing 9, 10, 11, 12, starting to get the red eyes, like, okay, we got to shut this down. But it was great learning, and it's one of the things that is going to be the norm if you're really going to make this transition. If this is not where you're coming from, not what your base interest was or base education is, it's going to be a lot of those type of nights. And that was the one thing that I really appreciated, that I had Kendrick there, pushing me and helping me and saying, hey, this is what it's going to take, and not making me feel like I was doing it by myself. Because that's the one thing that's not going to work. Because I tried that long before I met with Kendrick, and doing it by yourself just isn't going to work. You need mentors, you need help, you need to network.
Yeah. So the thing is, I appreciate Daniel, because once again, I didn't really have a formal plan at the time. I just kind of knew, here's what I know, and this is how I taught, because and I shared the story with them. The way I was taught networking is, I had these guys that I worked with, man. It was this guy, he's an engineer. He had already retired at one time, was on his second engineering gig. He and another guy walk over, and they basically brought these books over to my desk, and they put like this big pile of books on my desk, and they say, read this, and they walked off. And that was my introduction, like, for when I was doing, working full time as far as networking. I did get some experience in school and stuff like that, pulling cable and stuff like that. But I came into the field the hard way. And a lot of guys that you see that are like the high level engineering type people, they had some rough things. They had to endure some things to get there. And so people have this mindset that they want to take a shortcut to get there. And that's not the case. And so I teach literally to prepare you for the stress and the strain and everything that you're going to kind of deal with when you get in a job, because I know what I've had to endure, and all the people that are high level people around me, I know what they've had to endure. So Daniel, after we went through all of this, we went through the program, you completed the program, and we did the training, we completed all our training, and we leaned into it. And I'm a big fan of utilizing all the resources, but the main thing is you got to have focus. And I'm just going to tell you, most of the people that I run into, including Daniel, if you're trying to get into cybersecurity, you're like, I want to try this, I'm going to get this. I'm like, you're hungry. But if you're just picking random things, this is why most people are not successful, versus you getting a mentor and somebody saying, okay, here's what we really do in the field. Let's focus on A, B, C, D, and this will get you ready for your role, including getting your LinkedIn fixed up, getting your resume and all that stuff done. So we completed the program. Daniel, what happens next?
Wait, you want me to tell what happens?
I want you to tell this. This is your story. They see me all the time on this channel, so this is yours.
Okay, so I finished the Correlation 1 program. I continued to work with Kendrick. I was super excited about that. And Kendrick said something. He came to me one day, we were talking, and this shocked me, and I'm gonna be 100% honest, it shocked me and it scared me at the same time. Kendrick says, hey man, you've been putting in all this work. You just got that certification from Correlation 1. We got an opening at my job. I think you should apply for it. And he sent me the link. I opened the link and I looked at it, and this is my initial first reaction. There's no way I need to apply. I can't do this. I can't do this. I'm not ready. I need to study more. I need to do more. And Kendrick, correct me if I'm wrong, you had to chase me for like a few weeks before I would even put the application in. Isn't that correct?
Let's just say it's likely. It's likely.
Yeah. I mean, if you've ever played football and you've seen a cornerback backpedal, that's what I did. I backpedaled. And then Kendrick came back to me and was like, look, you've put in the work. You put in the work. Trust what you know, and let's go take this shot. And that's what we did. I put in an application, and a couple of days later, I got a call. And I got an interview, and then that's when like everything changed. And I'm so appreciative for Kendrick for giving me that opportunity, even thinking that I had a chance to even apply, when I personally, with everything we went through, still had those doubts. And I'm gonna be honest with you, that's normal. It's what you do with that emotion and that feeling when it hits. Like, do you let it, stop you, slow you down, or do you let it become like the springboard? And that's what I had to do. I had to make it become the springboard.
Now, I would tell you, like, so for the people that, if it's somebody I'm gonna recommend, especially to come work for a company that I work for, then that's my reputation on life. You know what I'm saying? Like, so I would not have recommended Daniel to even apply for the position if I didn't think he was qualified. You know what I'm saying? And so it didn't mean that he knew everything that he needed to know, but it did mean that he had the right mindset. And so 90% of the time, when I somebody that I'm looking at that I think, man, that's somebody I really want to mentor. That's somebody who I think will be a good candidate for this position in my company, or maybe I know a position and stuff like that. It's a particular mindset that I'm looking for. Somebody that's willing to grind, somebody that doesn't have a whole bunch of social behaviors that are negative, because that's an important part of, you have to train not only your technical skill, but you also have to change your social skills. Some people don't have they're not self-aware, and if you're not self-aware, I'm not going to recommend you, because you're going to go in there and you're going to cause problems with the team. So everybody needs to work on their emotional intelligence. You need to work on being able to speak and communicate to people and to be able to clearly convey your ideas. You need to be a person that listens. And I'm not a big fan of people who cut people off all the time. If you do that, that is something that you and I, we're never going to work. It's never going to be somebody going to try to bring into my area. And our team right now knows, the number of times that our team apologizes because if we jump in and we say something and somebody else was talking and we back up and say, excuse me, it's a beautiful thing, because everybody values the information coming out of the other team's mouth more so than them. So those are the kind of things. And Daniel checked all these boxes. And so you apply for the position, and what happens next?
I apply for the position and I get the first round of interviews, which is basically, asking about my background, why I want to do this. And then the biggest thing I remember from the first interview is exactly what Kendrick said. There was no real technical questions. The first interview was looking at my mindset, and if I had the right mindset to come into this type of environment and learn. And I think that's one of the biggest things that going through so many different types of sales situations that I kind of got, because sales can be chaotic, is that being able to continue to focus on the goal while so many things are going crazy around you, and not let your emotions take over and have you do things that aren't, advantageous to you or the company. And that was the first thing, the most important thing, and the first thing I kind of noticed from my first interview is figuring out if I had the right mindset first before they could really even consider bringing me on board. So what Kendrick's saying is 100% true. And it's the first thing that I kind of got tasked with, like, what kind of mindset do you have? Can you handle a stressful situation? Can you communicate well with others? Can you take in information? Can you digest it? Can you share it with others clearly who may not be on the same level that you may be on, and things of that nature? So that was step number one.
All right. So you're going through the interview process. Tell us the rest of what happened with the interview and all this. I know, of course, but tell them, you know what I'm saying? Like,
right.
Tell them what happened next. So
yeah. So it was three interviews. Of course, the second interview was a more technical interview about, the background and about my background, where I came from. And that interview was about my ability to learn. One of the things that kept being told to me was like, hey, listen, if you have the right mindset, you're willing to learn, and you're humble, I can teach you what you need to know. I can teach you about the tools we're going to use, what we're trying to accomplish. But if you don't have that right mindset, it's not going to work. I don't care what you already know. And that was one of the things I was able to kind of, put a spotlight on and show in the second interview. And then the third interview was more about, how do you work with a team, right? Like, how are you going to be able to fill in the gaps if this goes wrong? If this person is doing this, are you going to be able to work with them? Are you going to be able to be a team player? Are you going to leave your ego at the door? Because as Kendrick knows, man, in this industry, man, there's a lot of egos, a lot of gatekeeping, and a lot of, I want to be the one that did this, or I'm the one that accomplished this, I want the credit, things of that nature. And if I think that you're trying to better yourself and it might threaten my position, then I'm not going to share the knowledge that might make you better, that might make you more of an advantage for our team, which is interesting, but it is kind of some of the things that we see on a very regular basis, unfortunately.
Okay. So I guess the main thing is, from their perspective, they probably want to know if you got the job, right? They might know from the video. So
yes, I did end up getting the job, and it was one of the best feelings ever. It was like, I remember I got the call, and they were like, they kind of played it off a little bit, like, almost like, we're gonna do one more round. Like, no, we're just joking. We're gonna bring you on. Can you start, on this day? And I'm like, I can start on any day you want. But the one thing I thought was great was they were very respectful of the fact that I had a job and I had to, kind of finish that up. So they gave me extra time to kind of handle those things. But I did get the job, and I'm very appreciative of it. And it was an awesome, awesome, awesome day when that took place. I remember I called Kendrick and I was like, bro, I got the job. And I didn't even think about it. I remember telling you, he's like, I know that already, right? Remember I called you all excited?
Oh,
like
yeah.
It was going to be a surprise to you too?
Yeah, that's okay. Well, the thing is, when you apply for the job, I wasn't part of, I think I was still an engineering position? I wasn't a director or anything like that at the point, was it?
No, you were the senior engineer at that time. You were not the director.
So it's like I
I
didn't have.
interviewed with the director at the time.
Yeah, so the hiring decision came down to the guys I reported to. You know what I'm saying? It wasn't anything to do with my position that he got the job. He got that job because my team that I work for and my boss and the other people, the CEO, everybody, because we work for a startup, they felt that he was the right person for the job. And I'm so glad that every day I'm glad that Daniel works there. We both changed positions a little bit, you know what I'm saying? And so we see each other every day for sure. But the main thing I would say is, so you got the job, but that's just the beginning. Like, let's talk about the journey of all of a sudden you got into the cybersecurity position, you got all this stuff, and once again you had hands on because you'd already be. So the thing is with Daniel and I, we had already trained in Tenable and Sentinel-1. He already had hands-on experience coming into the company with those products because I was like, once again, if I'm gonna mentor somebody, my goal is to teach you what you actually use on the job, not some theory, not taking a whole bunch of random tests and stuff like that. Teaching you, if you're going to be a blacksmith, I always say this, if you're going to be a blacksmith, then you go be an apprentice to a blacksmith. That's how you learn the job. And that's exactly what we did. So he knew some of the tools. This is why he was able to bump ahead of a lot of the candidates because he was more readily a fit for the position. So I'm a big fan of training with enterprise tools. But when you started that position, brother, it was tough. This was some tough times in the startup, man. Some really tough time. So let's talk about you're in a position and now you got to live up to the requirements of the job, especially we're in consulting, right? So it's a different world. So go ahead, Dan.
Yeah, when I first started, because I didn't have all the experience and all the papers behind my name, all the certifications, it was a rough start. I did most of the, can we call it grunt work? Can we call it that?
You can call it whatever you want to, brother. I mean, I say tell the truth here because they need to hear the truth. Also,
Okay.
remember your position, right? You know, your position was what? You remember that? We talked about that? The
Oh, we
title
using the
that you
name too?
hated. Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, when I came on, I was called a sidekick, an associate sidekick at that. So that was kind of what they called us when we first came in, and I did most of the grunt work, all the reporting, all the the manual stuff like that, and things of that nature. And then I was just the shadow, the quiet shadow.
Yeah. Now,
And
sorry, go ahead.
go ahead.
Now I want to explain the whole psychic thing because like we're not the whole point is the company had this philosophy is that we make our customers a hero, so we're the sidekicks. So we're all sidekicks, but Daniel wasn't brought in as even a full-time sidekick. So like I said, I was still listed as a senior engineer, right? So but they had this title and there's this cool trendy startup thing that they did, but Daniel was an associate. He wasn't like an analyst, he wasn't an engineer, he was an associate. And that's one of the things that he really like your goal was as soon as possible to get associate out your name because you want to be a something that's complete, right? So that's what you can kind of share that story because that was one of your bigger, I know, peeves during this whole time.
That was. I felt like, I'm going to put in the work, and associate just kind of felt like to me like I'm off to the left a little bit. Like I said, I called it a quiet shadow because I did shadow you, but I wasn't to be like parents should tell the kids, you seen but not heard. I didn't say much. All I did was basically take orders to get this done, get that done so that you could focus on the more important stuff. And I felt like, I want to one day be able to, like you said, speak to the customers, actually put hands on the tools and do some of the stuff that you and I trained to do. Because initially I couldn't touch the tools when I came in. I could do the reports for what the tools spit out, but I couldn't touch the tools and make changes myself. And I felt like, that was a shortcoming on my part that I needed to fix. And it was an opportunity I wanted to have so that I could affect change. Because remember, that's the biggest reason why I left sales, because I wanted to be able to make changes that stood and move forward. So that was one of the biggest things I talked about. And as a matter of fact, there was one little virtual happy hour that we had where they asked us one year in January, what is your main goal? What is the main thing you're trying to accomplish this year coming up? And if you remember correctly, because you were in that meeting, I said, I want to get associate removed from my title.
I remember that. I mean, dude,
Yeah.
that affected you pretty seriously mentally, you know what I'm saying? Because you felt like you felt like less than a full employee, you know what I'm saying? Like
Absolutely. I felt like a point 0.5 employee, like half an employee, like, you're not being taken serious right now. We're just on anything that we can't get to because of time constraints, we're going to drop it on you.
yeah. And now the reality is he had an associate title because once again, Daniel he's came from sales, so he doesn't have an IT background. He doesn't have the help desk, the troubleshooting and all of that stuff. So I'm not saying that the title was wrong by any means, because at the time he had to pay his dues. And this is one thing I really want to emphasize is you got to be willing. Like if you want to come into a field like this, if you're not coming in as an expert, then you got to figure out a way to come in and pay your dues. But the thing is, you need to come, especially now, with something like asking a company to give you a chance and all that kind of crazy stuff. No, it's like you need to bring a skill set that's desirable to the company. And so he did that. He checked the box. Now he's working in here. Now he's just literally just doing monthly reports. He was the monthly report guy. I remember I felt so bad for him because I hate doing the monthly reports. You know what I'm saying? Because we all had to do them. But when Daniel came in, he became the person. So he had to stay and just do monthly reports, which means he logged into all the tools and pulled the stats and stuff like that to prepare those to be going out. And it sucked. But here's the thing. By him doing the monthly reports, he had to log into all the tools. So when he logged into all the tools, he learned a little bit about all the tools, especially pulling the data and stuff like that. So it was one of those things. At the time, it was definitely a grind. It's not desirable. But the thing is, it did, once again, and sometimes growth doesn't feel good, but it did prepare him to move forward. And so I remember, Daniel, one of the things that you talked about is like I would do a lot of vulnerability management and stuff back there. And we talked about that. And it was really kind of one of the things that we really do. Our company stands out when it comes to remediating vulnerabilities. Like that's what makes our company special, right? Because there's a lot of companies that push patches and deploy endpoint detection. But when it comes to vulnerability remediation, most companies don't do that. And so my thing is, okay, how do you ramp up to be able to do this? Because that's kind of what Daniel said. He told me one day, and we've transitioned positions now. So you can kind of talk about where we are in our positions and stuff like that and how our relationship is at this point. Be honest. Feel free to be honest.
Okay.
But also with that transition from the associate, what happened next after you were an associate, and then now that you're in a position that you're in now where, you know, we have a responsibility, like tell us about the emotions and that whole path to where you are now and what it's like where you are now in your position in your career.
Sure, absolutely. Honestly, it was very, very frustrating. There were some dark days because one of the things Kendrick didn't tell you about the reporting piece was I was doing reports for every single company that we serviced, every single report. And it was a lot of manual inputting, data input. And it took a lot of time. And I had to check to make sure the numbers were all correct and double check that because all of this was presented to each member, a lot of times on live calls. So if any mistake I made, it was highlighted on a live call with a member. So that was a lot of pressure as far as that goes, and a lot of work. And it was honestly, it was draining because I felt like I had more to give, but I wasn't being given an opportunity because of my background and because some other people had, like Kendrick said, they had the background in IT, they had the papers, they had the, you know, the certification, things of that nature. And all I wanted was just an opportunity. So it was tough. And I even let Kendrick know a couple of times, like, hey man, I'm struggling a little bit. But the thing about him is he kept me encouraged and he kept me focused on like, you're going to get your opportunity. Just keep showing your value, keep getting better, do a little bit more, you know, ask more questions, things of that nature. And that's one of the things that I value about where we work is that you can ask questions. Like a lot of people work places where they can't ask questions for one reason or another, or their voice isn't valued. And that's something that initially I didn't feel like it was, but it's definitely a big transition to where we are now and what we do now. And to speak on the transition, and Kendrick, I'm not going to speak for your transition. I'll let you speak on that. But for me, now I am primarily on vulnerability management, which is what Kendrick and I talked about that I wanted to do through Tenable, and that is my primary function now. So I kind of finally got that opportunity to level up and have more responsibility and not be solely just the report guy. And it is a tough spot where you continually have to learn, continue to have to grow, but it is that impact that we talked about, that we discussed, that I wanted to have, and that position allows me to do that as a social security engineer now, where we work at.
Yeah. So Daniel, man, he officially is the guy. He got the responsibility. And then I just had recently be like, okay, man, you got the responsibility. And now he's like, oh man, like, do I really want the responsibility? Because it's a lot of vulnerabilities. Like I say, and we're one of the few companies that's not selling this narrative, you know what I'm saying? That, oh, well, it's just a lot of vulnerabilities. No, that can't be remediated. No, I can tell you, we know the truth. Okay. For most companies, most companies, you can remediate just about 100%. And we do it a lot of times with our customers. We get them to like 0 critical vulnerabilities, get their highs down very close to 0 and stuff like that. But we do it. It's something that's become the normal. Like that's what we're striving for. And so, and us doing that, Daniel's had to learn how to do scripting and all kind of stuff like that. He's had to add to his additional skill set because we got to be able to do this at scale. And so Daniel is now full in his position. And also in the process, I was a senior engineer. And then during his time where he's working through his career, I became the director of technical solutions, which means I was responsible for all internal internal technology that we chose and use and stuff like that, and maintaining it and then supporting it. And then also I was still doing consulting too. So I was doing that. And now I'm the director of threat defense and remediation, and Daniel's now part of my team, which I'm so happy because like it's freaking awesome to see both of our journeys, how this kind of, work together, and we work together as a team now. But also this is where now my position is different. I'm like, so Daniel, for customer whatever, hey man, what's the status on that vulnerabilities?
Right.
I mean, they come in, they got like 1,000 critical vulnerabilities, and when they came on, like what are you at? So there is a lot of pressure because he's got to be able to like identify, understand, and fix these vulnerabilities in the customer environment. So you can tell us like, what is the journey now like that you are the man? You know what I'm saying? What is the journey like now?
Man, some days it feels like drinking from a water hose, honestly. Because as you know, man, vulnerabilities, they keep coming. They keep coming. They're always coming. And there's always something new to learn, which is kind of the gift and the curse of, kind of why I wanted to do this, because it's never going to be a situation where I'm at the top of my knowledge, because it changes so much, and there's always going to be something new to learn, some new vulnerability, some new attack surface, new attack vector that's going to take place, and we're going to have to understand that and react quickly to it. We have meetings weekly about new things that are coming out and what we need to be aware of. That's something we talk about daily, and it is tough because now that I'm in this spot, every single day I get that question for XYZ customer. Okay, cool. They're looking like this. What are they looking like now? What are you working on? How are you handling this situation? Do you know about this? What kind of script have you written for this? Do you have one that you're working on? So it is tough, but one of the things I like to tell people that are trying to do or try to reach that next level in life, that pressure is a privilege, because the people that you don't expect anything from, there's no pressure on them because you don't expect them to do anything. You don't worry about them. They disappear in the background. You don't care. So that's one of the things I try to remind myself when things get tough at work and I'm getting a lot of work, a lot of questions, or like, there's a lot of vulnerabilities in a particular customer or high value customer, which all of them are high value, but, larger customers, especially, because the bigger the number, the more focus it is on that number. But I just remember that pressure is a privilege, and I'm happy that privilege lands on my shoulders.
What advice, based on your journey, would you give somebody who's and you know what the market looks like now too? You know what the cybersecurity job market looks like. You know what the industry looks like. What advice would you give to folks out there that are doing all this stuff? They're doing the certification tests, they're doing the boot camps, they're doing the college programs, going into debt. I'm not a big fan of that, by the way. You know what I'm saying? Going into debt to get into cybersecurity. Sometimes they don't even have jobs and they're spending money on credit cards to get training to transition to cybersecurity. What would you tell all those folks that really want this and want to have the same experience that you have, but are not there yet? What is your advice to them?
I would say a couple of things. Number one, always keep in mind what your goal is and make sure that goal is clear. Like, make sure you fully understand what you're trying to accomplish. That's number one. Number two, don't believe all the shortcuts that are on social media, where they're saying, hey, all you got to do is get these 2 certs and then apply for this job and you're going to make this amount of money. That's not true. That's not true in any shape, form, or fashion. So my advice is not listen to them. And my third piece is and this is something that Kendrick really helped me with, find a way to get hands-on experience with the tools in the industry that you are going to potentially use. So in my journey, one of the things I found out, there's a lot of groups, a lot of programs that are going to help you get that hands-on experience. And that goes a lot further than just the pieces of paper. Hey, I got this certification. And I'm just going to speak from something, not going to, say any names, but I've gone up against a guy that had a ton of certifications, but there's a couple of skills he didn't have. One, when he got in front of people, he's really nervous, couldn't speak to people, couldn't break down what he was going to do for them or break it down to a level that they understand it, talking to technical things of that nature, those soft skills that Kendrick alluded to, you have to have those skills as well. And number two, you have to stay humble and always be willing to learn, no matter what you've accomplished. Always be willing to learn and always stay humble, because no matter how great you are, no matter how good you are, whatever it is that you do, there is somebody better.
Now, one more thing, I think the final for everybody who made it to the end of the video, Daniel looks really young. Do you mind sharing how old you are, Daniel?
I don't mind at all, man. I just had a birthday last week. I am 44 years old.
Yeah, that's pretty crazy to me. He still doesn't look like he's even out of his 30s to me, but he is 44 years old. So, and he made the transition into cybersecurity in his 40s. For those of you that are thinking, am I too old to get into cybersecurity? No, you're not. But this is not a shortcut. This is not a short-term play. There's always somebody who gets lucky, a lot of times I think it like, everybody knows this person who got drafted in the NBA, but let's talk about all the people who didn't get drafted in the NBA. And that's really how cybersecurity is. The story keeps getting perpetuated because there are some people that are having success. But if you want to really, truly ensure that you have the best opportunity to get in cybersecurity, you need hands-on experience. I am finished up. I got a group. I really got a really good group of mentees right now that are going through the program. If you're interested in cybersecurity mentorship, let me know, reach out. You can just leave me a comment, stuff like that. But I can tell you, I don't accept anybody in the mentorship program. I'm looking for people who show a lot of determination and who are really like working on themselves personally and stuff like that. Those are the people I like to work with, because to me, it's not about the quantity, it's about the quality. So once again, if I've had people ask about mentorship, I'm interested in working with people. I love being able to help change lives, but you need to really assess. You heard Daniel's story. You need to say, am I serious about this? Because like a lot of people say they want it, but when it gets to the hard work part of cybersecurity, they kind of want to go jump around and bounce around and get their dopamine hit because they play with this tool and play with that tool, versus you sitting there grinding one tool until you become an expert. So that being the case, I hope this video was beneficial. Daniel, anything else you want to share before we wrap up?
Yeah, just one other thing, man. Like Kenny said, it is going to be a tough journey. But the main thing you're really going to have to do is be comfortable with being uncomfortable, because that's where real growth happens. And that's one of the things that to this day, every single day, we're put in uncomfortable positions, right? And we're used to it now. And you have to be able to embrace that uncomfortable feeling and realize that's where your real growth is. So if you're looking for something where you're going to, eventually get to a comfortable spot, that comfortable spot doesn't exist. At least not in this industry, not that I've seen in my short time in the industry. That comfortable spot doesn't exist.
Yeah. And if you get that comfortable spot, you probably won't have it for long. So for everybody that's here, okay, I'm not going to say don't like the video and all that bull crap. What I am going to say is I'm going to link some playlists for Sentinel-1 and Tenable. I'm starting a whole new series on Tenable. I've got one that's a complete series on Tenable. I'm redoing the entire series because Tenable's changed. If you want to see the real, I'm giving it to you for free. Okay, it's right here on the channel. So check out the playlist, Tenable, Sentinel-1. I have a PowerShell playlist on the main portion of my page. These are the real things that we utilize every single day to remediate vulnerabilities and to make our customers safer. In addition to that, future videos coming on Okta and stuff like that, because single sign-on, identity access, multi-factor authentication, those things. So I'm showing you all the real tools that we use. So I hope that you will consider standing and checking out the channel. But check out that video series. That's going to be beneficial to you. And if you come back, I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.